The morning that changed everything. It was supposed to be an ordinary Monday morning in March. The city of Sydney woke to the sound of light rain, the kind that makes the streets shimmer in silver and blue. People rushed to work, coffee in hand, unaware that somewhere among them, a young woman, a bright, successful dentist named Dr. Preeti Reddy, was missing. Her friends had been calling her since dawn. No answer. Her phone went straight to voicemail. And by noon, the unease had turned into panic. Preeti wasn't the kind of person who disappeared without a word. At just 32 years old, she had built a reputation in her field for being calm, kind, and focused. Her patients adored her. Her colleagues respected her. And her family, who had immigrated to Australia years earlier, saw her as their pride and joy. That morning, her sister, Nithya, arrived at her apartment, knocking repeatedly. The curtains were still drawn. Her car wasn't in the driveway. Something felt wrong. Hours earlier, CCTV footage from a downtown McDonald's captured Preeti's final known movements. She was seen standing in line, calm, holding her phone, smiling briefly at someone behind her. That someone was her ex-boyfriend, Dr. Harsh Nardi, a fellow dentist she had dated years before. They had both attended a dental conference that weekend. It had been their first time seeing each other after a long breakup. What started as a friendly conversation turned into something more, at least, that's what the cameras suggested. The two walked out together into the rainy night. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. By the next morning, Preeti's phone pinged once on the network. A faint signal, then nothing. Detectives from the New South Wales Police immediately began tracing her last contacts, her credit card use, her social media. Every lead pointed back to one name, Harsh Nardi. He had checked into a nearby hotel the night before. When police arrived to question him, they found the door locked from the inside. Silence. They forced their way in. Inside, the room was still, except for a note left on the desk and the lifeless body of the man they had come to question. He had taken his own life. The note was short and cryptic. It mentioned regret, love, and confusion, but no confession. And that's when investigators realized, the story of what happened to Preeti was far from over. In fact, it had just begun. That morning, as the news of his death spread across Sydney, police made a grim discovery. On the outskirts of the city, in the backseat of a parked car that matched Preeti's registration, they found what they had been dreading for days. The air was still. The car doors locked. Inside lay the missing dentist, wrapped carefully in blankets, her life cut short by someone she once trusted. What happened between that smiling moment on CCTV and the horrifying discovery of her car would soon unravel a story of obsession, heartbreak, and betrayal, a story that shocked an entire nation. And it all began with a smile caught on camera. To the outside world, Dr. Preeti Reddy and Dr. Harsh Nardi were a picture-perfect couple. Both young, successful dentists with promising careers ahead of them. They had met years earlier at a dental seminar, two bright minds drawn together by ambition, humor, and long study hours that turned into late-night dinners. Their relationship began warmly. Friends described them as inseparable. Harsh was charming, intelligent, confident, the kind of man who could command a room without even trying. Preeti, on the other hand, was reserved, focused, and deeply kind-hearted. They balanced each other out, at least for a while. But behind the smiles and social media posts, things weren't as calm as they looked. As months passed, Harsh's charm began to take a darker turn. He became controlling, often questioning where Preeti went and who she spoke to. Friends remembered small, troubling details, him showing up unannounced at her workplace, subtle arguments at gatherings, his voice rising just enough to make her flinch. She confided to a close friend once that she felt like she was being watched all the time. Still, she stayed. Like many do, she hoped he would change. But the tension kept building. By their third year together, the love that once held them together had turned into something suffocating. One night, after a heated argument, Preeti decided she'd had enough. She ended the relationship and cut off all contact. For months afterward, Harsh tried to reach her, calls, texts, even messages through mutual friends. But Preeti stayed silent. She focused on her work, her family, and her peace. Slowly, she began to heal. When she attended the dental conference in Sydney, she wasn't expecting to see him again. It had been almost 2 years since they'd spoken. But fate, or maybe coincidence, had other plans. Witnesses from the conference said that when Harsh saw her across the room, he froze for a moment before walking straight up to her. He seemed polite, calm, even apologetic. Preeti, always kind, didn't turn him away. She agreed to have coffee later that evening. That meeting led to dinner. Dinner led to a walk in the rain. CCTV footage showed them together near her car, chatting casually. Nothing looked alarming. But as investigators later pieced together timelines, phone data, and witness reports, they discovered something chilling. Harsh had booked his hotel room days before the conference began, under an assumed name. He had searched online for Preeti's schedule, her hotel, even the nearby restaurants she was likely to visit. This wasn't a chance encounter. It was planned. Detectives began connecting the dots. After their dinner, Preeti texted a friend around midnight, saying she was heading home soon. She never made it. Her phone went dark around 1:30 a.m. Harsh's phone signal followed a strange path, first toward her hotel, then to the outskirts of the city. By 3 a.m., his car was parked just miles from where hers would later be found. And yet, he still showed up to work the next morning. Calm. Smiling. No sign of distress. To those who saw him, he looked completely normal. But in the quiet of his hotel room, he was writing that final note, the one police would later find beside his body. Detective Sergeant Angela Smith of the NSW Homicide Squad described the case as one of the most calculated acts we've seen disguised as a coincidence. Harsh had made it look like fate brought them together again. But in truth, it was obsession. He couldn't stand the idea that she had moved on. And that obsession was about to claim 2 lives, the woman he couldn't let go of, and the man he could no longer live with being. The city of Sydney was still waking up when detectives swarmed the hotel where Harsh had been staying. The rain from the night before had stopped, leaving the air heavy and cold. Inside the small, tidy room, investigators found what looked like a quiet tragedy, a man who had ended his life beside a handwritten note. But detectives knew this was not the end of a story. It was the beginning of a bigger truth. On the night before his death, Harsh's phone records showed a series of unusual activities. He had called Preeti multiple times between midnight and 2 a.m., all unanswered. Then, he searched for local fuel stations, backroad maps, and one chilling phrase, "How long does it take to die in a car?" When forensic officers examined his car, they found traces of blood in the trunk, fibers matching Preeti's clothing, and GPS logs that led to a remote street where her car had later been discovered. Everything pointed to one thing: this wasn't a crime of passion. It was premeditated. At the same time, a team of divers and K9 units searched nearby rivers and roadsides, following digital clues. CCTV from a gas station showed Harsh's car following Preeti's late that night, the headlights flickering through sheets of rain. Detective Smith later told reporters, "We could see him tailing her car for over 40 minutes. He knew exactly where she was going." In Preeti's car, forensic experts found evidence that told a silent but devastating story: a struggle, a moment of violence, and then, stillness. It was over quickly. The pain for investigators wasn't just the brutality of it, but the precision. Harsh had planned everything, from booking the hotel under a fake name to hiding his car miles away, ensuring no one would connect him to the scene until it was too late. Days later, police traced Harsh's final moments. After hiding Preeti's car, he returned to his hotel, cleaned himself up, and made several strange calls. One was to his parents in India, a short, quiet conversation. Another was to his workplace, where he left a voicemail saying he wouldn't be in for personal reasons. He then ordered room service, a final meal, and wrote a letter addressed to those who loved us. The note was emotional but vague. It never admitted guilt directly. Instead, it spoke of regret, love, and peace. He ended with the words, "We'll meet again where the world doesn't judge us." When police found him the next morning, the scene was eerily calm, the bed made, curtains drawn, the note centered on the desk like a confession that refused to name itself. But the story didn't end there. As detectives combed through Harsh's phone and laptop, they uncovered months of digital obsession. Emails never sent. Deleted messages recovered. Dozens of searches for Preethi's location, photos of her social media posts, even comments she had made on friends' accounts, quietly screenshotted and saved. He had been following her life long after she thought she was free. To the outside world, he had moved on, new job, new city, new smile. But behind closed doors, his obsession had grown into something unrecognizable. Something dangerous. The case shocked not just Sydney, but an entire nation. The headlines read, "Respected dentist killed by ex-boyfriend." But those who knew them said the story went much deeper. It wasn't just about jealousy or heartbreak, it was about control, and how it hides behind affection. For Preethi's family, the discovery was unbearable. Her father, speaking softly at a press conference, said, she trusted him once. And that trust cost her everything. Police later stated that if not for the digital trail Harsh left behind, many would have believed the story ended with his death, a tragic couple lost together. But the evidence told the real truth. This wasn't love gone wrong. It was control that never ended, even after goodbye. The news broke across Australia like a storm. For weeks, every network replayed the same haunting footage, Preethi Reddy smiling in a McDonald's line, moments before she vanished forever. That small, ordinary moment had become a symbol of something much larger, the fragile line between trust and danger. Investigators had pieced together nearly every second of the night she disappeared. The timeline was now clear. After leaving the conference dinner, Preethi met Harsh briefly for coffee. They talked about their careers, their families, their lives apart. Witnesses said it seemed cordial. But just after midnight, Harsh persuaded her to follow him to his car, saying he wanted to return something she had left behind years ago. She agreed. It was an act of kindness, and it cost her life. What happened in the following hour would remain known only through the evidence he left behind. The car's GPS, the hotel's security footage, and a trail of forensic proof told investigators that Harsh had snapped in a moment of rage when she refused to rekindle their relationship. By dawn, her car was hidden in the suburbs. And by evening, Harsh was gone too. The investigation officially concluded that Harsh had acted alone. But that answer gave no comfort to her family. The truth may have been found, but justice never had its day in court. At the memorial, Preethi's sister stood before a crowd of hundreds. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. Preethi's story isn't about how she died. It's about how she lived, and how love should never hurt. That sentence echoed across the country. Newspapers ran editorials about controlling relationships, emotional abuse, and the warning signs so many miss. Support lines saw record calls in the weeks after the case was closed. Preethi's name became more than a headline, it became a call for awareness. Detectives, too, were changed by the case. For months after, they continued studying Harsh's behavior, hoping to understand how a man so respected could hide such darkness. The patterns were clear: isolation, manipulation, obsession. Traits that had been dismissed as just protective or a little jealous until it was too late. Detective Angela Smith later said in an interview, "Control doesn't always start with violence. Sometimes it starts with charm." The case file was finally sealed 6 months later, but the memory of it lingered. Police officers, family, and friends, all left asking the same question: could anyone have stopped it sooner? Years later, the cafe where Preethi was last seen still stands, the same fogged window, the same blue reflections on rainy nights. Locals sometimes pause outside when the weather turns cold, remembering her story, how ordinary moments can hide extraordinary tragedy. Her family continues to honor her memory each year, raising funds for women's safety programs and mental health awareness. They never speak of revenge. Only prevention. If there's one truth this story leaves behind, it's this: evil doesn't always look like evil at first. Sometimes, it wears a smile. Sometimes, it sounds like love. And sometimes, it walks you to your car on a rainy night, pretending to care, while quietly deciding how your story will end. But not all endings are silent. Because today, every time her name is spoken, Dr. Preeti Reddy's voice still echoes, warning others, saving lives, reminding us that trust, once broken, can be deadly.